I have to embarrass you a bit by talking about your own rise and rise as well, because you're the first female executive member of the board.
Really understand what was the story, what was the history behind Brighton, what made Brighton special, and which bits are we going to take from that story and protect and take them with us on the journey into the Amex, and how are we going to kind of grow into our new shoes, really, but carrying that heritage with us. So, and we did that by creating the Team Brighton values, which are embedded in everything we do.
So Rose, you're the head of people and culture here at Brighton Hove Albion. You can't manage without people and you can't manage without culture. So tell us about your job and what it involves.
Well, it's quite wide-ranging. We've got over 1,000 staff now at the club. So we've got about 450 what we call core staff, so permanent staff turn up every day, like you and me and the grounds team, etc. And then we have around 700 or 800 casuals who we largely just see on a match day, but that also includes things like casual coaches in the evening. So my team look after all of those people, everything from onboarding, recruitment, all the way through the employee journey to the exit at the other end. And exits at the other end don't always result in being gone forever. Sometimes people come back, which is also great. So it's very varied. No 2 days are the same. And I've got a brilliant team and we love what we do. So we've got great people.
You've just scared me there. I'd last 5 minutes in that job. I don't know how you handle all that, all those people with all their needs and their contracts and their comings and goings. I mean, it sounds exhausting, but presumably you've got it down to a fine art, have you?
Yeah, and I mean, as I say, it's not really down to me, it's down to the team. They are absolutely brilliant. And we care deeply about our people, and that comes all the way down from Tony. I know we're going to speak a little bit later about the culture, but the tone is set at the club by Tony Bloom, and that then kind of rolls down all the way through the board, through the senior management team. So the culture's clear. Tony cares deeply about people. We care deeply about the people, and we spend a lot of time at work, right? So we want people to come into work to enjoy what they do, to always be learning, and also to feel connected to the football, because what a brilliant industry to work in. I mean, this is not like your average 9 to 5. This is, you're normally all in. There's a clear purpose to what we do. And I think if you can connect people as much as possible to that core purpose, people really enjoy what they do. And, they give you a bit more, and they have meaning in their lives. Yeah.
There's a good reason for doing it in the sense that people become more productive, don't they? And more engaged and more committed and more loyal. They're happier. And you kind of, as well as looking after them, you get more out of them, don't you, really?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be, you need to be enjoying what you do. You need to feel like it's interesting work. And I think, thinking about the people team, if you're interviewing, for example, in the morning you could be interviewing somebody who's absolutely obsessed with turf and grass and talking about the science of, this pitch that's actually constantly growing and moving. It's not just a lawn. This is something incredible. And then in the afternoon you could be talking to a physiotherapist about how to rehab an Achilles injury, and what they would do and what's the next innovations coming down the track in terms of medical. And then the next day you could be talking to somebody who's a media specialist, like Tom, who's obsessed with making brilliant content. So it's a really exciting and a varied world that we operate in, and I think that it does keep it exciting.
Yeah, because that's, in my experience, that's been poorly understood at some football clubs in the past. There's a focus on putting the team together, winning games, all the rest of it, the results end of it. But actually building a community, almost a family of people who are committed to the cause and who believe in it is so much more effective, isn't it? And it's so much more fun to be around than a culture where everyone just comes in and shouts at each other every day.
Yeah,
because I have seen that, I promise you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we operate in an industry where every single percentage improvement matters. And, we did quite an interesting exercise when we sort of moved over into the training ground, and we met with some of the teams and we spoke about, we mapped the player journey, for example. So we basically said, okay, if you think about a first team player, think about Lewis Dunk, what is his journey in the morning and which touch points does he go through in order to arrive at the feet of the head coach? And actually there are probably 20 or 30 touch points, and each of those touch points performance involves a member of staff. So it involves, the chef being on their A game. It involves a beautifully clean environment, which is our stadium assistants and training ground assistants. It involves a perfect pitch that's going to be just watered to the right amount for performance to take place well, but not to be injured on. A kit that's prepared. It's a person who's letting them in the morning and has turned up for work to open the barrier in the morning. So that all of these people are involved in that player journey to deliver that player at the foot of the coach. And I think the first team coaching staff will, if you say, who's the most important people in the building, you might say, well, it's the head coach. But actually, if they can't even arrive at the feet of the head coach to arrive in training in a safe and well prepared manner, then it's no good to Fabian if Lewis doesn't even make it to training, because the rest of the staff weren't on their A game that day and didn't do their bit. So all of those 1% matter, and every single person in that journey needs to highly perform. And I think that's how you sort of connect people to that end game. So at 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon, the guys walk out on the pitch. 2:00 on Sunday, the girls walk out on the pitch. It's there's a whole load of discretionary 1% that have been dialed up, hopefully, to get them to that point. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it's fascinating, all the things that people don't see that go into making up the performance. And there's so much in there, isn't there? Will you join the club from Sussex County Cricket Club in 2010? Very different environment.
Yeah.
And not being rude about Sussex County Cricket, wonderful place, but they wouldn't have had that level of sort of input and management, because it's a different sport with different level of resources. But so when you got here in 2010, it was good here, but it wasn't like this, was it? It wasn't at this level. So just tell us how you built that up over 15 years.
Well, it has been an incredible journey. So when I was hired, we were a year prior to moving into the stadium. So the stadium was cranes and mud and a big field full of workmen, and we were operating out of Withdean. So my first task was having to staff up for the stadium, to get ready for the stadium opening. And that was, I look back now and I sort of smile sometimes. I think, I wish we could do it all again, because, we made so many mistakes, like you do.
Really?
We were, of course, you hire too many of one thing or not enough of the other. Or it was a very steep learning curve. But we also did a lot of work on the culture. So we sat down, obviously there was a very small staff when I joined, probably like 30 staff and probably about 120 stewards on a match day. So we had to, we wanted to bring those people with all of that heritage and all of that loyalty and history with the club. We wanted to bring them on the journey. And in some ways, that's quite frightening for people to come on a journey from a very small, environment where everyone's kind of mucking in on a match day, and maybe somebody could be making a cup of tea for the gaffer, but in a new environment they're going to be half a mile away from the gaffer, so they're not making a cup of tea for them anymore. So it was trying to really understand what was the story, what was the history behind Brighton, what made Brighton special, and which bits we're going to take from that story and protect and take them with us on the journey into the Amex, and how are we going to kind of grow into our new shoes, really, but carrying that heritage with us. So, and we did that by creating the Team Brighton values, which are embedded in everything we do, and they were formed out of consultation with staff, consultation with fans, the board, who obviously are all fans, and all sponsors, and lots of people have been on the journey with Brighton over the years, and we just listened to lots and lots of stories from over the years about what made Brighton special. We sort of put them all into buckets, if you like, and then what emerged was these themes, which then became our value. So, treating people well, exceeding expectations, aiming high, never giving up, and making it special. And the aim high, never giving up value, it really resonated with me, and it still that's the one that it gets to me all the time, in a great way. And I think there are so many stories in Brighton's history and in recent history of times where we just never gave up. We just went again and we went again. And, Martin, I always quote sort of Martin Perry and the resilience of that man to turn up every day at work, having been told, no, you can't have a stadium there, and all of that work. And to turn up and do that every day for over 10 years, And then to finally get to yes and get the stadium built, I mean, that's a remarkable story of resilience, and somebody who did it with humour. I mean, he used to be my neighbour through the wall in the office before he retired, and, you know, he's always on the phone, like beating up the council and, you know, on the phone to planners and, you know.
Amazing man.
He's incredible. Yeah, it was an incredible story of resilience. And then in later years, obviously, when we just missed out on promotion and, you know, and the you know, and speak to, you know, Glenn Murray, he would have been part of that journey, and just the absolute determination that next year we're going up and we're not going through this playoff thing and we're just going to go straight up. And we did the following April. And I think there's so many stories of this kind of, you know, we fail, we go again.
So do you think the struggle to survive and the near-death experience in 1997 shaped those values because they helped everybody appreciate what they have and want to protect the club and preserve and develop the club? You had a kind of a backstory of survival, didn't you, to push you on, I suppose?
Yeah, definitely. And I remember that, when we missed out on promotion, the following day there was a board meeting here. You know, Chris Hughton came, but there was this real energy. I mean, Paul described it. Of course, everyone was massively disappointed, but there's energy and this belief that we could do it next year. And I think for me, there was that journey of when Paul came in, about sort of 5 years before we were promoted. I think it probably took us 5 years to really believe that we could do it. Everyone wanted to do it, and get to the Premier League and go up a gear. But I think there was always this maybe slight imposter syndrome, or I can't quite sort of find the right words, but that maybe we didn't quite believe that we could. And then when we just missed out on promotion that year, for me, that was when some sort of switch went off and everyone was like, do you know what? We absolutely can do it. We deserve to be there and we're going to go there. And the next year, of course, we got there. So it was, and we were ready for it too, which was also part of the plan.
I have to embarrass you a bit by talking about your own rise as well, because you're the first female executive member of the board. There are non-execs, aren't there? Michelle Wilder and Anna Jones, but you're the first exec female member. So that must have been a very proud moment for you to get round that table. Yeah, it was. I cried when Tony told me. He called me into an office just round the corner from here, and him and Paul, and it was in about sort of April, May time. And it was very close to my 15-year anniversary with the club. And they called me in, and Tony did this lovely sort of speech, just saying thank you so much for all of your loyalty over the years. We spoke about some of the challenges we've been through. We've had many ups and downs, incredibly sad times, incredibly emotionally brilliant times as well. And he spoke about journeys. That was emotional in itself. And I was thinking, oh, my team have tipped him off here that I've done 15 years. And then Paul's sitting there, he's grinning from ear to ear, and I'm thinking, what's going on? I did pass through my mind. I thought maybe my time was up. I thought maybe that was was like, yeah, it's been lovely, but maybe you thought you got an OBE or something.
Yeah. And then he just sort of paused, and then he just said, oh yeah, would you like to join? I'd like to invite you to join the main board. And right. I was I didn't see it coming. I was utterly gobsmacked, and so had a little cry, and it was quite nice actually, because afterwards apparently he said to Paul, that's one of the nicest reactions I've ever had, like somebody who truly, so grateful, and I felt really humbled. Got huge admiration for Tony. I think he's just this incredibly clever guy, and is the passion he has for the club. I mean, it's so unusual now in Premier League football, isn't it, to have an owner that's born in Brighton, loves the club so much, and is incredibly brilliant at what he does. So huge admiration for him. Obviously, I've worked for Paul for a long time. He's a brilliant CEO. So to be invited to sit around that table, Christ, it was like, it was a huge honour, and I had to keep it a secret for a while. So that was also in a way, it was helpful because I could digest it, but then it also didn't seem real. So I was able to tell my son and my partner, and they were both absolutely thrilled. Is it hard when you get invited onto a board like that at first to, do you want to sort of keep quiet for a while and kind of learn the ropes before you start making interventions, or were you kind of quite vocal from the beginning? Did you kind of feel confident enough to make your voice heard? Yeah, I mean, my dad said to me, he said, "Oh, Rose, just remember this: you've got two ears and one mouth for a reason." So, and I think, and there's some advice I had from really great people, and they just said, "Look, don't feel like you have to say anything. If you don't have a view, don't try and have a view if you don't have an opinion about something. So I did a lot of listening. I've only had one proper board meeting so far. We had an away day, which was really good, but then my first meeting last week. But yeah, no, it felt good. I was obviously, I think you'd be lying if you said you weren't a little bit nervous, and you want to create a good impression, and you want to, give meaningfully to that discussion. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to be around that table. It's a real honour to be around the table.
Oh, I'm sure. You're closely involved in Vision 2030. Just tell us about that.
So in April last year, Paul stood up and presented his vision for the next, where he would like the club to be by 2030, and that sort of went across lots of different things around, diversity on the board, how we want to be performing on the pitch, where we want to be from a women's perspective, from women's football, and all manner of other sort of goals really, and visions, and he then invited everyone to present back to him. So all the departments across the club were invited to think about what their response to that is and what they would need to do. So over the summer of last year, and actually right up until about November time, Paul and I, we sat with various members of teams across the club and the foundation, and we heard about their vision for the future, what they would need. We asked them what their blockers might be to being, to getting there, what they would need. It was absolutely brilliant, and everyone in the club was involved in the process, and around 180 staff were involved in the actual presentation, so it was really interesting, and then from there, obviously we started to put some of those plans into action. There's already been some changes obviously at board level. In the middle of that, we'd also hired Anna Jones and Paul Brown, who have obviously remarkable careers. I mean, Anna runs the Telegraph. She's absolutely incredible human being. I'm sort of completely in awe of her. I don't know how she does it and still smiles. Yeah. And Paul Brown, who's also incredibly successful. They bring some new expertise onto the board that we didn't have before. So that was also quite exciting. So there was a lot of changes already happened, but I think it's given everyone a new focus, and it's really helped us to understand where we needed to strengthen the squad, if you like, off the field. And one of those areas, I'll give an example, was around technology. So every single department spoke about a lack of a central technology strategy as a blocker to potential growth and performance, be that, sticking drones in the sky for training, to, having a dedicated media centre at the training ground, etc. So there was a lot of talk around technology, and off the back of that, we've hired a chief technology officer to join the team, for example. So that's one example of how we've already started on that journey. Yeah,
amazing. What does your match day look like? Are you heavily involved on match days? I imagine you are.
Yeah, well, now I get to sit in a comfy seat in the boardroom, so that's a real privilege. But my team rotate on match day, so I'll always have two members of the team on site. And on a match day, that's when often we see staff that we only ever see on those days. So retail casuals, ticketing casuals, stewards, etc. So there's always people around. Quite often, it's quite a practical match day. It's kind of making sure they've got everything they need and inductions and contracts and pay queries and all that sort of thing. But we also have safeguarding team on site. So obviously, looking after keeping our young people safe is incredibly important to us. So behind the scenes is an incredibly effective safeguarding team. We've got safeguarding up in the control room, and we have people on the ground sort of roaming and responding to queries, and that could be unaccompanied children, it could be concerns about children. So yeah, there's quite a lot behind the scenes going on a match day, and also we're looking at how is the operation working. So for example, we've just got this amazing extension to the retail store. So what's going on in there? Do we have the right number of staff? How big's the queue? What's the people impact of that? And also, what's the fan journey looking like? Are the fans interacting with people who are well trained, who smiling, helpful, making their fan experience a great? Because it's not just about the game; it's about the whole day. And people are spending a lot of their hard-earned cash to come to the stadium, and they want to have a great experience from the minute they get off the train and interact with the steward to the minute they leave on the final day and the final minute of their experience and wave goodbye, maybe go into the shop, buy a shirt on the way home or something. We want them to have a great day.
I'm just wondering when you get to sleep, actually.
Not very very often.
2 hours a night by the sound of it. But and where does your love of football come from? Where did that start?
So my son, my son's dad, he is a massive Arsenal fan. So Jack was kind of raised an Arsenal fan from a very young age, and it's kind of you know what it's like. You sit there with your kids, you watch football, and it was the glory years of Arsenal. It was the kind of Thierry Henry and Pires, and it was that it was that glory. So it's always been that in the background. So Arsenal's always been my second team. It's my first big game I ever went to was at Highbury, and so that's kind of I love live sport. I mean, I'll go to anything really. I'll go and watch equestrian sports, and get me a ticket, I'll go. And then obviously I went to work in cricket for a bit, and then obviously when I got the call to come and have a coffee with Brighton, it was really exciting. And of course you become a Brighton fan, don't you? Over the years of going to love the club. And
it would be hard not to, working here every day, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
Really? Yeah.
Exactly. So.
And when you look ahead to the next 5 years, I mean, you've just described a lot of projects and a lot of principles that you're pursuing, a lot of values. How different will this club look in 5 years? Because sometimes you walk in here and you think, well, everything's done. Everything's finished. It couldn't be any better. It's all been perfected. But presumably you're working all the time to make improvements. Yeah,
I'm never really satisfied. And every year, I always encourage my team to push on. I always invite the team to unpick what we're doing, to analyse what we're doing. It could be, look at the induction programme. Right, let's have a look at that again. Is that fit for purpose? Do we need to add some more stuff in? I think it's going back to that sort of 1%. The extra 1% matter, and everything matters. So I'll give you an example. So over the summer, for example, we were thinking around, we had, I think last season we had 22 different nationalities in the squad. And it was of interest to Tony around languages and helping to ensure that, people can speak English and learn to speak English confidently. So we've always had that provision, but we've strengthened that provision. And we've recruited more staff who are multilingual.
Yeah.
And then in the medical space, we've recruited staff who were trained in different countries. So they all have different methods. So that's quite interesting as well. So that lends another, an extra 1% when people who are literally hands-on with players.
Yeah.
So I think I look across, I can see improvements that could be made everywhere. And I think everyone just needs to challenge themselves and be open to change. And I think also feedback's important. I think I've got a colleague in my team, and he uses this phrase like crunchy conversations, and he says, in a high performance environment, it's really important that we get used to being comfortable in uncomfortable spaces. So how can we create an environment where I could give you feedback and you could give me feedback, but we both walk out feeling okay about it. But it might be hard to hear, or it might be hard to give, because I think if you think about that from a football perspective, Fabian's doing that all the time. He's giving feedback all the time. He's having difficult conversations all the time, and I think if the whole club gets used to that space, that's how you unlock that extra bit. That's how you make a chef 1% better, or people and culture person 1% better. So
yeah, that's such an interesting point, because to me that goes to the heart of modern, I'll call them industrial relations, for want of a better phrase. It's how you look after people, but also challenge them. You can't look after them to the point where you don't tell them when they need to do better, for example, or they're doing something wrong, or what they're doing is not acceptable. So to challenge and to care for at the same time is a big job, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not easy. There's a book out there called Radical Candor, basically giving feedback in a kind way.
Yeah.
So I think it's something, if I can perfect that, in the next 5 years, I think that would be incredible. And there are some people that are very good at it. And, I think there are others, of course, we're all human, aren't we? Some people, they can take feedback really badly, and find it, that really struggle with that. So I think that's really important. I think never being complacent. I mean, look at the strength of the teams in the Premier League. I mean, it's, who knows what could happen. So I think never being complacent that we've nailed it, we've got everything right. I think it's always having our antennae up. And I think it's that, we pride ourselves on being a very friendly club. We're hopefully you guys feel welcome when you come in and well cared for. But I think also that doesn't mean to say you can't be, ruthless about winning. And so it's that constant balance between, really high standards, but also doing that in a way that brings people with you on the journey. So. Yeah.
Well, as a star of your trade, finally, Rose, if there are people listening to this and there will be people listening who want to go into your line of work, young people perhaps, what if you could give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
I'd say never turn down an opportunity. Can I give them 2 bits of advice?
Yeah, 2's fine.
Never turn down an opportunity. So I think some people, they have very narrow focus. So if they're looking for a particular role, they'll say, like, I only want to do this job. But actually, if you go and do the job that's similar to it, you could end up, it opens the door into the job you really want. So I think that's the first thing. I think some people have too narrow a focus when they're starting out. And the second thing is particularly in football and any high performance environment, I see opportunity absolutely everywhere. And the reason I've got my sort of portfolio grew from just people and culture to safeguarding and ED&I and all the other things that sit under my umbrella was because I saw that nobody was doing them and I just started doing them. So I always say to people, see a gap, step into the space, start doing the work, obviously carefully because you might annoy somebody. But, I think too often I find people are the other way. They'll say, well, I'm not going to go and do anything extra because what about the money? What about, it's like, no, don't worry about the money. Just
get in there first.
Step into the space and start doing the work and everything else will follow. Yeah. That'd be my 2 bits of advice.
So before we let you go, Rose, a final thing, some quick-fire questions for you. So first, match day at the Amex or a European away day?
Oh, European away day.
Depends where it is, I suppose.
Yeah, spicy.
First Brighton match you ever watched?
Bristol Rovers at Withdean in April 2010.
I think I was at that one. Favourite Albion player of all time?
Pascal Gross.
Yeah. Weird. Mine too. I think we're just agreeing on everything here. Best goal you've seen at the Amex?
Oh, God, there's so many. Matoma's little magic touch and then that goal against Chelsea. And if I can have 2, Believers one against West Ham, that final minute when the whole stadium went bonkers.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, Matoma's was goal of the season, wasn't it?
It was beautiful, wasn't it? You could watch it over and over and never get bored.
He almost scored another one like that the other day.
Yes.
One word to describe Brighton fans.
Oh, lucky?
Yeah.
And I say that in the context of having Tony.
Yes.
Yeah, the best owner.
And finally, if you could relive one Brighton match, which would it be?
It's got to be the promotion game, isn't it? That was such an emotional day. I think that the culmination of all that work and, watching the players walk out on that day, knowing what could happen, it was incredible. And then what did happen, obviously, was absolutely amazing. And there was always this, I always said to my colleagues, the moment we get promoted, just can someone please make sure there's a camera on Tony, because I will never get bored of seeing the celebration and seeing that minute when he knew we clinched it, and it was so amazing. It's a day that I don't think anyone will ever forget, will they? So
no, you're right. And thank you, Rose. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.